Okay guys, now I've got a confession to make. I did actually fail in getting any videos with my drone whilst travelling, and this is due to my first recommendation of the things you should check before you go travelling. Hello everybody, my name is Paul Tace. In this video I'm going to talk about my experiences in travelling with the DJI Mini 3 Pro. So let's get started. If you've watched any of my other videos about travelling, I always say to check the law first. Now I went to Spain, the Gran Canaria, and I knew this is part of the EU, so I thought the laws would be pretty easy, pretty flexible, and I thought it'd be really easy to get registered and get flying out there. So I did a little bit of research. I applied for my registration 2 days before I went out there. Thinking by the time I got out there I'd have my registration and I'll be able to fly. And this was not the case. Now whenever you fill in this information you have to be in the country that you're going to be flying in. Where I was flying in Spain, for me to actually fill out the information I had to be in Spain. But what I did was I applied for it before I got to Spain, so when I was in Spain I could do it straight away. Now when I went through the registration process it asks all your passport numbers, your birth date and your name. Now, would you believe I actually failed on my name? Mainly because when you put your name in, it asks for your first name, your first surname and your second surname. Now in the UK, I just see it as a first name, a middle name and a surname. So I put in my first name as my first name, my middle name as my first surname and my second name as my second surname. So basically they sent it back saying that I got my name wrong and they couldn't fill in the application. So then I had to re-register. I had to try registering again, and when I did it this time I thought I would put down my first name as my first name, my first surname as my surname and my second surname as my middle name, and again I got my name wrong. So for the third time lucky, for my first name I put in my first name and my middle name, and for my first surname I put in my surname, and I left the second surname blank. And this time I got my name right, so congratulations. However, by this time it'd already been 7 days from when I'd first applied to register. So what I found was that morning when I first saw I had completed my registration, I thought I'd start walking down somewhere I wanted to fly, and I would fill in the application and fill in all the details needed as I was walking down there. So when I've gone into the email, I've had to check a box to say that I'm not a robot, and when I tried doing this on my phone, it would not allow me to tick the box. So I then sent the email to my partner, who then tried to tick the box for me on her phone, and she couldn't do that either. So in the end, I couldn't even get through the registration process. I feel there is the translation wasn't particularly good. There was no references or any examples, and although it's a fairly straightforward process, the way it was laid out was a bit confusing. It's very time consuming, and I found it very difficult to even get to a stage where I could tick that box. In the end, what I found is the only way I could tick that box was to use a PC, and to do that I had to actually come home and tick the box on the PC at home, in which case I was no longer in Spain, so I could not get registered to fly in the EU, which is obviously really disappointing. So yeah, I couldn't legally fly in Spain. But what I will say is that I did see people there flying illegally. There was people very blatantly illegally flying in certain areas. So like obviously I'm not saying you should fly legally. In fact, I'm saying you shouldn't fly legally, and I didn't fly legally. But what I will say is that if the authorities make it so difficult to register, there's going to be some people that don't fly, and there's going to be some people flying illegally. Obviously the repercussions, I'm not sure what it would be in the EU, but there's going to be repercussions. But also I didn't really see anybody policing drones, or anybody even care that there were drones being flown. Now the second thing I'd like to say about the law is more than just registering. If you're going to any other country, I'd recommend looking at the laws. For example, in Spain it said I wasn't allowed to fly at night time, although everything else was pretty much similar to the UK. Now what I didn't realise before I went to Gran Canaria as well is that pretty much the whole place is illegal to fly if you want to fly for commercial, or not commercial, for video or photographic purposes, because they don't want you to be able to sell those pictures on. Personally, I feel that's unethical, but at the moment that's the law. Hopefully that may change. but you should be respectful of the law, in my opinion, even if you don't particularly agree with it. Okay guys, so let's put that aside because this isn't anything to do with the Mini 3. I guess the only way that does have anything to do with the Mini 3 is that it's a sub 250 gram drone. So you would expect that you wouldn't have to register this drone because the sub 250 gram drones usually get past a lot of laws. In the EU, that is not the case. I recommend doing the research for any country you go to. But if you're flying anywhere in the EU, you're going to need to register your Mini 3 Pro. Which would have to do with any drone. So I can't knock points off for that. It's just something you have to be aware of before you fly your drone. Everything else with this drone was really positive. Now, I've been traveling with drones quite a few times now. There's a few things to point out. The first tip is I would always make sure you've got your gimbal on there. You don't want to get knocked about. Now, I always buy the case whenever I'm going, whenever I buy a drone, I always buy the Fly More combo. I'd always recommend keeping the case with you. I found it's a really nice size, it's really easy to carry. If you just want to go for a walk, you can sling it over your shoulders. Also, like sometimes you might be worried about people recognizing that it's a drone. You worry about people stealing it. You always really easily fit into your backpack. And I find that I can always travel very easily with my camera and my drone. It's just easy to get around. So being so small, being sub 250 gram, there's a lot of laws that it will get past and it's very easy to carry around. Now obviously the foldable arms make it easy and small to collapse. I don't need to tell a lot of people how good this drone is for traveling. It's small, it's light. One of the really good things about this drone is it can shoot in 10-bit, so you can get some really nice high quality footage at 4K. I'd say semi-professional to professional shots. And so what more can you want from a drone? For something where you're traveling, you can get professional quality shots and it's just so easy to get around. It's such a great drone for that. Now, if you're getting on a plane, there is going to be laws about getting the batteries on the plane and also the drones on the plane. Now, whenever I have flown, despite what it says, I don't like the idea of putting my drone in my suitcase and keeping my batteries on me. I like to know I've got everything together. So I've taken a bit of a risk a few times. What I do is I just put everything in the bag as I'm going through the checkout. As I'm going through security, I put everything in the bag. And I always put it through separately, and I have not once been questioned about taking a drone into another country. Now they say you're only allowed 3 batteries when you're traveling of this size. I don't remember the exact size, but I know these are one of the ones where you can only have 3 batteries that you travel with. Ideally, when you travel, you don't want them fully charged. So if I know I'm going to a hotel where I'm going to be able to charge the batteries, that's not a big deal. I'll just leave them half charged. If I'm going traveling and I'm not going to be staying in places that necessarily have electricity, I would generally keep them charged, even though I shouldn't recommend it. I've never had any problems with any battery setting alight, and as technology goes on, I feel it's less of a problem, but it is still a potential problem. They do also have like LiPo bags like these you can put the batteries into and travel with, and should any of them be damaged, it will start a fire within the bag and it will contain it to the bag. So you can get one like this, which is obviously going to have all the batteries in there, so if one of them gets set alight, they all get set alight, so you might want individual bags for each battery to make sure that you've still got some batteries left if anything goes wrong. Okay guys, so that's some tips on flying in other countries and things to look out for, things that can trip you up, and something that actually tripped me up, so I thought it'd be valuable for me to share my experience. Now when I went down there, I actually wanted to fly over Massapellamas. I can't even say it properly, but it's basically the dunes in Gran Canaria, down the south. Although they're really impressive to look at, I couldn't actually fly over them because they're protected anyway. They won't allow any drone flights for video or for photography, so it is actually a real big shame. And actually most of the island was covered by this law, so it was pretty much no point for me taking the drone on the holiday. However, it didn't cause any problems. I got it over there easily, despite the fact there's almost nowhere to fly it, and I run into no problems at all in terms of traveling and moving it around. I did take it down to an area where I intended to fly it before looking at the laws and also not being able to register. So everything up to the point of takeoff was very easy, but the actual point where I had to take off and the laws came into account is where my downfall was. So If you are traveling to the EU, I recommend looking into registering in a lot more detail, give yourself a lot more time. I'd recommend starting the registration process before you get to the country and then finishing it in the country. I also believe you've got some tests you would have to complete before you can legally fly your drone. I feel like I was rambling a bit in this video, but I also feel there's a lot of useful information. So let me know let me know if this is useful. Hit that like button if you have found it useful. That's it for this video, guys. I hope to see you in the next one.